In Section 3, we'll go over some important concepts: AML program requirements, who enforces these rules, taking identification on behalf of transactions, customer conversations, frequently asked questions, the Office of Foreign Assets Control, and a summary of how to stay out of legal trouble. The Patriot Act requires all MSBs to have a 4-pillar AML program in place. It consists of written compliance policies, a compliance officer, independent compliance reviews, and regular compliance training. How can you remember these 4 pillars? Just think of the word port, P-O-R-T. No, not this kind of port. P-O-R-T means your compliance policies, officer, reviews, and training. Port. Your written compliance policies must be your own policies, not just your licensee's compliance manuals. And they must be followed, and not just be a book on the shelf. You should have a knowledgeable, empowered compliance officer. In most small businesses, the compliance officer is usually the owner. The compliance officer takes care of everything related to compliance. You must have regular independent compliance reviews, and they have to be done at least once a year. They should not be done by the same person who wrote the compliance program, and they should not be done by the same person who manages the compliance program day to day. You should have regular compliance training for all your employees at least yearly. New employees should be trained before attending customers. Keep a log of all training sessions held, including details such as who taught, what was taught, who was trained, the time, the place, etc. When checking ID, compare the photo to the person's face, compare the signature if available, check for signs of alteration in the ID, and ask yourself, does the home address make sense compared to where you are? Does the date of birth make sense compared to the appearance of the customer? Ask the customer if this is the most current home address, if there's any doubt, and make sure the ID is not expired. The ID must be government issued. It must be recognized by you, and you will record the issuer, the type, the ID number, and the expiration date. When we discover the person conducting the transaction is not the owner of the money being sent, we still must get the conductor's ID. In addition, we now must obtain the owner's name, address, taxpayer ID number, and date of birth, if known. If the taxpayer ID number and the date of birth are not known, a notation must be made in the record to that effect. For corporate on behalf of transactions, we must verify and record the name and address of the individual presenting the transaction, and record the identity, account number, and Social Security or taxpayer ID number, if any, of any person or entity on whose behalf such transaction is to be effected. Financial institutions have an obligation to know their customer to an extent commensurate with the risk associated with that customer or category of customers. Knowing your customer, or KYC, starts with identification, and as the amount being sent gets higher, you should seek to know to a reasonable extent the source and purpose of the funds being sent. A red flag is an alert. It's something that a customer says or does that warns you something needs more attention, more research, or more thought. Any sign or detail that warns you some customer or transaction may seem suspicious and needs to be investigated. When you see a red flag, you need to ask further questions until satisfied that you have satisfactory answers, or, if not, consider terminating the customer relationship. Not taking appropriate action when you see a red flag may lead to money laundering charges based on willful blindness, which is a form of negligence. Never joke about money laundering, even outside of work. Never answer a question you do not fully understand. Never agree with any statement you did not fully hear. Never say, I don't care where the money comes from, or it's none of my business where the money comes from. Customers frequently ask, how much can they send without showing ID? If you have a $3,000 threshold, please do not answer this question by saying $2,999.99. Your answer should simply be, we ask for ID starting at $3,000. If the customer tries to send less than originally planned, you must reject the transaction if you believe this customer is trying to evade a BSA requirement. How many different forms of official photo ID must I see? Normally, only one form of government-issued ID is necessary, usually either driver's license, alien ID card, or passport. It would only be if you were unsure of one form of ID that you might ask to see another. What if I don't recognize the type of identification document the customer shows me? Do not accept any form of ID that you do not recognize as being valid. Can I accept a Social Security card as a form of ID? No, the Social Security card is not considered a secure identification document. Does a customer have to prove that his Social Security number is valid? No. We accept the customer's word for it. The Office of Foreign Assets Control is an office of the U.S. Treasury. OFAC enforces economic and trade sanctions against specific countries and individuals. OFAC rules apply to all U.S. persons and entities, companies, nonprofit groups, government agencies, etc., wherever located. Penalties for violations can be severe. OFAC rules prohibit doing business with certain individuals and countries through two programs: the List of Specially Designated Nationals, or SDNs, and the country's sanctions programs. The SDN list is mostly made up of terrorism suspects and drug criminals. One day, you may have a blocked transaction. If the transmitter software detects a possible SDN match, the transmitter will contact the agent to obtain further identifying details that will help to rule out the match. The transmitter will ask for the customer's complete name and date and place of birth. Do not return the customer's money if an OFAC SDN match is suspected. The transmitter may have to call OFAC for assistance. Once it has been determined that funds need to be blocked, they must be placed into an interest-bearing account at a bank from which only OFAC-authorized debits may be made. The blocking also must be reported to OFAC compliance within 10 business days. If you know your customer's name is a possible OFAC match, the best way to prevent problems and help speed up the process is to make sure the customer's name is as complete as possible and get the customer's date and place of birth at the time of the transaction. The country's sanctions programs prohibit or place certain restrictions against doing business with certain persons from certain countries. In some cases, an OFAC license may be required to send money to these countries. So how can you stay out of legal trouble? If you see something, say something. Do not accept or continue a transaction if you have reason to believe it involves criminal money. Be alert to the signs of structuring and never counsel, help, or allow a customer to structure below any threshold. Know the BSA rules, the transmitter's rules, and your own internal rules, and follow them. This is the end of the training. Thank you for your attention. Whenever you are ready, please take the quiz. If you get a score of 80% or higher, you will receive a certificate by email. Bye-bye.